Alright, with the 2011 series and G rewrite out of the way, it's time to get to V, the reboot series, aka the 2018 series, the Shinamon arc, and If. So just like my other rewrites, I'm going to be mainly talking about the story and what things that could have been done better, especially with the characters. And also some of the units that could be utilized better, because like almost everything, there is always some wasted potential in some of these things. So let's begin. So we start off with the 2018 series, where it's basically a manga adaptation, with a few changes here and there and some add-ons. And for the most part, the story is fine. Few things rush here and there and could add some improvement, but for the most part it's fine. One thing I still want to be very clear about is that anything relating to magic, you should probably make those units become real instead of everything happening in imagination. Because it makes more sense in my opinion for the leaders to be crushing their units physically, thus crushing the fighter's bond with it. Because everything happening in imagination just makes no sense. But for the most part, when it comes to the story, it's fine. Now, before we make any add-ons or changes to the story, let's go through some of the characters, because some of them are improvements and some of them are downgrades. When it comes to improvements, I think some characters were done really well in comparison to the original series. The best example to me is probably Kai and Ren. Ren's family being abusive, which eventually caused him to have the mindset that winning is everything. And then there's Kai with a very deep, dark backstory. Unlike the 2011 series where Kai's parents died, Kai's parents were caught doing a criminal act which eventually caused him to be adopted by other people. And many people did not want him to be in their household because of his surname, which eventually caused him to tossed around, feeling isolated, thus causing the self-isolation, which eventually caused him to choose Dragonic Overlord as his main unit and Vanguard, because that's all he had, and he had a good reason to choose Dragonic Overlord, unlike the original series where there was no explanation. And also I like Funny Kai. And the adorable moments with Aichi and Misaki, because Misaki is softer in this series. But anyway, there are more characters that are improvements, but those are just two prime examples. Now when it comes to some wasted characters, the biggest one is probably Kamui. For being a prominent member of the 2011 series, in the V series he's practically not a main character. He gets at most the shop challenge battle, loses to Kyo, and then practically does nothing until Psyqualia Zombie, and then tries to help Kyo get his bond back with his Vanguard, which Kyo is an improvement in my opinion. Now I do like these side roles, but they should really do more with him considering how prominent he was in 2011. And then to the big one, the added NWO characters. Other than the added shop challenge, which didn't exist in the manga, these characters practically did nothing to the story. They just practically disappeared after the Psyqualia stuff began, and then shows back up in the epilogue season of the high school arc. What is the point of adding them in if you're not going to really utilize them? I know Kenji was in the manga, but that was like a cameo for the Asia Circuit arc, which was later changed to Leon, because they changed Leon to the Asia Circuit champion, and he never existed in the manga, but they added him in. And not only that, he has Psyqualia too, which makes it even worse because Psyqualia is so prevalent in the manga story that they just practically made him disappear out of nowhere. And also, what is the point of de-aging him? It just makes Julian and Charlie look like Shodas. And also the erasure of the Aquaforce lore. For such a prominent clan, I really hate how they just erased the Aquaforce lore. Now if they have to change it, I don't mind it. So here's my take for the V Aquaforce lore. A powerful navy that could potentially even rival against the leaders, primarily Dragonic Overlord, because I see Dragonic Overlord and Maelstrom as polar opposites, so why not make that type of lore for them? And also so we could have water versus fire, right? And then when it comes to adding Leon to the story, I get that you want to follow the manga timeline, but at least acknowledge that he exists in the story. He doesn't need a fight in the Psyqualia arc, but he could be training Aichi instead to get stronger. Because Kai and Ren are looking for strong fighter, and Leon is considered a strong fighter as well, an Asia Circuit champion, and yet no acknowledgement that he exists. So instead of Leon just suddenly disappearing, he does exist, and instead of fighting, he decides to train Aichi because he sees Aichi's potential and has him to fight. This way, not too many changes with the manga, and also Leon helping Aichi's Psyqualia. And then we should probably have a mini Asia Circuit arc. There was a little build up for Kai to face off Leon, which in my version, Kai does participate in the Asia Circuit Championship. This is so Kai could face Leon in the top 4, and then Aichi does defeat Ren, so then of course like the final battle, Aichi versus Leon. Not completely necessary, but at least give us the Kai versus Leon fight. And into the Psycholia zombie arc, just give him some stuff to do in the beginning, leading to the face-off against Brant after Brant defeated Ren, so we could have a proper first appearance of Brant Ringer instead of just showing up for one fight and lose. And also Leon gets a new Maelstrom evolution, equivalent to the V versions of the evolutions of the trio. And then when it comes to the Vanguard Koshin arc, other than say not rush it, in my version, Leon is not DH and he's also part of Hirumi High. This is so we could also have a Leon versus Ren fight, thus showing how strong Ren has grown at that point. Because seriously, why is Leon just a commentator? That's just a waste of a strong fighter to use, with Psyqualia on top of that. And then speaking of Psyqualia, time to get to Kai Qualia. Kai only uses Psyqualia for one fight, and that was against Aichi, and that was it. One more fight that he probably should have used Kai Qualia with is against Ibuki. Yes, he'll still lose, but at least utilize that a little more. Gust Blaster Dragon should have showed up against Brant, but for the most part these are the main changes I want to make, because in many ways the story is pretty well done, but it also wasted a lot of stuff, especially those added characters. And also I really like how during the Vanguard Koshin arc, during the aftermath of Psycholia zombies, nothing was just fine. The people who got deleted are still lost with their bonds with their Vanguard. I really love that build-up. It's just the Vanguard Koshin itself was rushed. Give it more episodes, better closure. And then to the Shinamon arc. I really like the characters on the Shinamon arc, especially on how immature Shinamon is during his young age. The story is pretty well done in the Shinamon arc, but just like the 2018 series, there were quite a bit of wasted characters in this series. First off, there is one character I would like to add to do more in the story, Arte Hibino, the little brother of the main antagonist of the first arc, Eska Hibino. Considering that they're siblings, I don't get why they did nothing with Arte, especially he did not make an appearance until the very last episode of the arc. And considering that he was possessed by Gastiel and GZ, and we never saw his true personality, this would have been a good way to see how he truly is. His whole role could have just been being another rival for Shinamon, protecting his sister. But nope. I mean seriously, we got Valiance's host Kaiser Ruga in this story, and we saw his true self. Why can't we do that with Arte as well? And considering that 2 of the original Apostle hosts are here, why not just add Gailey Kirk as well, Gregdora's hosts? Not necessary, just a little fan service right there. And then when it comes to more wasted characters, we go to Nanami and Todori. They're supposed to play as another rival for Shinamon, but they did nothing with that, especially they just decided to rush the fight and decided to make them lose to Team Dragon's vanity. Especially when Nanami's arc is to open up to more people. And she also wants another chance to fight Shinamon and defeat him. And also to defeat Eska so she could prove that she's a strong fighter. But then her team was used to completely get wrecked by Team Dragon's vanity, because I get that it's used to show off their strength, but it's just very hurtful that they did not get to fight against Shinamon's team. Which is why I wanted to add Arte as another team to go up against Team Dragon's vanity, so at least they get the chance to fight against Shinamon's team. And also, Shinamon's student Tatsuya was also part of their team, and he feels completely wasted in the first arc. I like his role in the second arc, but the first arc he wanted to be a strong fighter, and he wanted to learn how Shinamon gets strong as well, which is why he wanted Shinamon to be his teacher. But after that one focused fight with Tonori and loss, he practically does nothing. His arc is to become a stronger fighter, and he's always just practically in the sideline. Considering that he joined Nanami's team, and in my version her team does go up against Shinamon's team, it would be cool that Nanami decides to let Tatsuya take on Shinamon. This is so at least we could see how much Tatsuya has grown against Shinamon. Because you know, developing the character's strength. And also, Team Dragon's vanity isn't completely necessary, but I get why for story purposes, and it's also quite a bit of fan service, and we get to see Ruga's character. And then in the final fight against Eska, I think Eska should have showed a new boss unit just to parallel against the Astraeos dragon, because some promotional material for some reason suggests that she's the main rival for some reason, even though Mark is more so. Not exactly necessary, but I just wish that they done so. And then when it comes to the second arc of Shinamon, really love the dark turn it got here. And for the most part, the story is fine, especially because this arc is essentially a rewrite of the lab incident that happened in G. which I personally don't mind it, and I actually kind of like this version better because it actually gave some explanation on what happened and much more deeper details. But the unit I really wish they didn't waste was Bind Time Dragon. Considering that it was shown in so many G flashbacks with Ryuzu, I am very surprised that they did not have Ryuzu use Bind Time Dragon. Especially, he did not meet Chrono Fang Tiger yet at this point, but they decided to rewrite it, which I don't personally mind. Especially, it kind of gives an explanation on how Ryuzu knew about the Zodiac Time Beast just by meeting the Chrono Fang Tiger. But considering that Bind Time Dragon was used in so many G flashbacks, especially as one of Ryuzu's ace cards, it just kinda hurts that it just doesn't exist in V. So in my version, during the Ryuzu vs Eska fight, not only Eska shows off her new Isabel, Ryuzu also shows off Bind Time Dragon. Or it could be in the first fight with Shinomon where he does use his Bind Time Dragon and then Chrono Tiger Rebellion gets revealed in the fight against Eska as it's his boss unit's evolved form. I'm just saying. And then we should also have a second fight between Shinomon and Ryuzu because that was kind of built up, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and then we got the reveal of Tatsuya. So in my version, before we get the reveal of Tatsuya, Shinomon does go up against Ryuzu and defeats him. And before that, when Shinomon was fighting Rive also showed up a new God Hand Dragon, but unfortunately that didn't happen, but that's not very important. But anyway, the Shinomon vs Ryuzu second matchup should have happened because that was a little built up. And then the rest of Shinomon arc is pretty much fine. For the most part, it's just some characters could have been utilized more, maybe some added fights, and some units that should have been utilized that weren't. But for the most part, characters were really good in Shinomon, and also definitely the story because it was very deep and I love it. Especially because I like how they took the slice of life approach in the first arc. And then how it ends was a Shinomon passing down the torch to the next generation, which is Chrono. Unfortunately, we did not get a G continuation, but overall, it is fine, I like it. And then when it comes to If took a different approach because card fighting doesn't really exist in that world. Instead, we got Mahou Shoujo's doing Monster of the Week. I did not really mind the light-hearted approach in the beginning. It was until we go to Kai is when everything got real. Because this is just how many Monster of the Week animes work, especially with Mahou Shoujo's. And for the most part, the story is fine. I really like how they did the butterfly effect here. Kai never bumps into Aichi, which means he never gave him Blaster Blade, and Kai also lost the Blaster Blade, which means that Kai could never have handed the Blaster Blade to Aichi, which eventually resulted for Aichi to become a darker person, and the butterfly effect of Kai eventually quitting Vanguard because his parents were not caught being criminals and actually being successful, and having a happy family, which I really love the Dark Ultimatum here, and also the role reversal between Aichi and Kai. Because if they restore the timeline and make Aichi happy, Kai suffers. But in this timeline where Aichi is suffering, Kai is the one who has the happy life. And I just really love what they did here. So in story-wise, it's pretty much fine. But when it comes to some wasteful things, first off, Leon should probably have been in the story as well. Another Psycholia user. He didn't need to be partnered with someone from Ultra Rare. But considering that he has Psycholia as well, and considering in my version Aquaforce actually has prominence, he should at least be featured in it to the final battle. And also, I really like the pairings here with the Psycholia users, Ibuki with Suiko, which was kinda hinted back in V, and I just really love their moments together, although I did not really like how they turned Ibuki into a gag, but at the same time I just kinda love it on how silly it got. And also Ren and Rekka. I don't know why I like that pair, might just be fun to see. Now when it comes to some of the units, I get that some of the units just appear and then just to get wrecked, and personally I really wish they didn't do that, at least utilize them a little more, but luckily they weren't really important units. But few units that probably should have been utilized more, especially on some build-up. First off, I really hate how Harmonics Messiah has been depowered here. Seriously, losing to Majesty Lord Blaster? Yes, I get that Aichi and Majesty Lord Blaster makes him a lot more powerful, and I also get that Messiah isn't all too powerful without blessing other people, but Messiah shouldn't be that weak. In fact, since we got Kai with Blaster Blade fused with a Messiah makes Messiah Lord Blaster. Why couldn't we have Messiah Lord Blaster versus Majesty Lord Blaster? And considering that Ren's main grade 3 is Phantom Blaster Dragon, why couldn't we have Ren use Phantom Blaster Overlord against the Majesty Lord Blaster as well? Now, Phantom Blaster Overlord might job against the Majesty Lord Blaster Aichi because Aichi with Majesty Lord Blaster is a lot more powerful, but at least utilize these units. And if Leon's in it, of course, utilize his new Maelstorms and all that. And considering that they wrote Majesty Lord Blaster as a miracle card, I really wish that they wrote Dragonic Overlord the Cross as the new miracle card that could stand up to Majesty Lord Blaster. Seriously, when Kai showed up in If, they were slowly building up to the Dragonic Overlord the Cross reveal, because he was going back to Overlord, having his memories return from his other life, and just evolving Overlord, which eventually got to the Cross, which was a nice first appearance, and we finally got an actual reveal of the Cross, instead of a 3-second cameo from G. And seriously, for such a special unit that was built up to, the Cross could have been built up as the new miracle card that could stand up against the Majesty Lord Blaster Aichi, with the power of crossing 2 different timelines, which is why he could summon the End, and also to continue the tradition of Blaster Blade and Dragonic Overlord being rivals. So we could have had the Majesty Lord Blaster versus Dragonic Overlord the Cross fight. I am really surprised they didn't even take that route with the Cross. And then a few other things is that I would really like Emmy to be an actual card fighter. I mean seriously, she's in the Vanguard world, a Maho Shoujo for Vanguard, and yet she doesn't know how to play the game. And also, an on-screen Rebuki versus Ren would have been nice. Never got that in V, and even in Messiah, it was just brief. Not too important, although I would still like Emmy to be an actual card fighter, especially with the ceremonial fight that could be written better with Emmy versus Kai. Emmy using Majesty Lord Blaster to honor Shuka, and then Kai using every destiny he had, crossing timelines, versus the Cross. I think that would just been a cool way to end the V series. But unfortunately, we didn't get that, but for the most part, I do like the story. At most, I will have to say some units had to be utilized better, especially the Cross. So that's it for my V rewrites. What do you guys think of them? What other changes do you guys think I should have made? And what things would you like to add? Because I might have missed some. But for the most part, I just talked about most of the stuff I wanted to see, and what stuff I would have liked to change. And also, what stuff did you like from V more so than the original series? And that includes G as well. Because V has improvements in comparison to the original series, and also has some downsides along with it, but either way, both series have their ups and downs. So go ahead and tell me that below. But on that, see you all next time.